Hi, this is Thomas Swaak, Philips Innovation Services. Change Management Hacks. Hack number 12. If you want to make it through a transition successfully, you need to build in short learning loops and venting loops. Let me repeat that for you. If you want to make it through a transition successfully, you need to build in short learning loops and venting loops. Now, a project is usually divided into 3 phases. Initiation phase, where you're preparing to get everything ready. Then there's a transition phase, where everybody learns what they need to learn in order to go through the change. And there's a closing phase in which you make it all sustainable. Today, we're talking about that transition phase. Now, if we take a very simple example of, for instance, a new process being introduced, so a new innovation process, and you get to the stage where everything has been communicated, all the workshops are ready to go, and people are ready to start learning this new way of innovation, you actually go into a transition phase which is quite chaotic, because nothing is the way it was before, and you're not ready yet for the new situation. You're actually in transition. Now, it is at this stage in which people become loosened from their moorings, and they start trying to find a new compass, a new way of working, a new way of being and communicating. That's not always the easiest phase. And one of the ways to support this phase is to do 2 things, actually. One is to build in what I call short learning loops. What does that mean? Well, if you target a specific audience for a number of workshops and a number of things that they need to learn to go through the change, what you do is you build in short learning loops afterwards. So they go through the workshop. 2 weeks later, there's a half-an-hour meeting, maybe a meeting on the internet, where people can share their experiences, talk to each other about the problems they've run into and the new things they've learned. 2 weeks later, there's another one. And what you do is every phase that you have, every stage that you have, you build in these short learning loops where people are sharing what they've discovered, sharing what is difficult, and actually solving problems together. So those are short learning loops. They need to be built in. They need to be planned in. It's an obvious idea, but executing it is something else. Then there's what I call the venting loops. Now, a project usually knows a drumbeat in which you talk about deadlines, in which you talk about risk, in which you talk about progress, and a burn rate and all the other nice and technical terms that we have to tell ourselves that we're actually going through a process. That's not what a heartbeat is. A heartbeat is what I call a venting loop. It is a planned half-hour meeting every 2 or 3 weeks or so with everybody who's involved in the program or the transition. It's not mandatory, and there's no agenda. Here's the kicker. The only point on that meeting is, how do you feel? What's going on? And these heartbeats, so-called heartbeats, become a platform where people can talk informally about not only the factual side of going through a transition, but also the emotional side, on what's frustrating them, on what's angering them, on what's making them scared, and actually helping each other get through that. So, 2 things. Short learning loops and venting loops, or heartbeats, if you like, are 2 great ways of getting through the chaos that is transition. This was Thomas Swaak, Philips Innovation Services, Change Management Hacks. Let me know what you think.